All right, today we're going to cover how to make underglaze transfers. So first thing you're going to need a nice thing of foam. You're going to need a silkscreen squeegee. You need some cornstarch. Put it in this separate bowl. You need a hockey brush, or honestly any brush, whatever. You're going to need a sponge, and you're going to need some silk screens that preferably you've designed yourself, but you can really do whatever you want. All right, so for the underglaze transfers themselves, what you need is underglaze and this thing called silkscreen medium. And the silkscreen medium is going to thicken it up, kind of like a tapioca pudding. So to make your underglaze, you want your underglaze to thicken up a bit before it. I just left the lid off for a little bit. Squirt it into a separate container and mix it up. It should be the consistency of pudding or like normal silkscreen ink, you know. And if it's not, that's when this bad boy comes in handy, the silkscreen medium. You're gonna get just a pinch, just a little scooch, a scotch, if you will. Do it by eye, never do too much. You did too much one time and it just became a giant big like rock. And you don't want that. No rocks here. We're not J-Lo. Mix it up as best as you can, and it should, be the consistency of like a pudding. This little snack pack. And also, don't forget you need your jelly plate, Kyle. Can't believe I almost forgot that. Quick refresher on how to make silk screens. I covered this entirely in another video, so you can click that, but we're using the photo emulsion, so the light sensitive process for this. So whenever you're designing your images, this is just an example from another one, it helps to design them in like a place like Procreate, digitally. It's a lot easier to create your patterns and all that. But yeah, don't listen to this for how to make your screens. There's a whole video on how to make your screens, Kyle. All right, so to show off underglaze transfers, we can't really show it off unless we have something to show it off on. So here's a little quick refresher on how to make a mug. Here with the mugs though, Kyle, you really need to focus on making them straight up and down, all right? As straight as possible. You're gonna go into this much more detailed in another video, but for just this, keep the walls as straight as possible. Here you got some porcelain slip just to give it a little pizzazz, a little bit of zhuzh, some other French terms I do not know. That's just to make it so it's a little bit more special for whenever you apply the silkscreen underglaze transfers. Same thing for even if you're doing a bowl. These are little Unomi cups, so really straight walls. You like to do that pretty sharp undercut underneath. But basically, it's just the straighter the better. Since we're going to be rolling this onto the jelly plate, you want these to be pretty straight up and down. Okay, so with the jelly plate, take that little, it needs a little bit of something. So the cornstarch actually makes it so you have something to hold on to, the silkscreen underglaze. So with it, just put some on, dust it around. You can't really use too much because you're going to be brushing off any excess. You can use too little and it creates some not ideal circumstances. But the nice soft brush makes it a lot easier to brush it off. So go ahead and grab your silkscreen. You designed these in Procreate and then you edited them in Adobe Photoshop to create the pattern. I can in the future just make a video on how to design these things. It's not really that hard, but sometimes it helps to just have a guide, I had to look up several different tutorials on how to do it. Maybe it should be a one-stop place. So take your glorp, your underglaze ink. It's pretty thick at this point. Call it ink because just I'm a printmaker. We're used to calling it ink. It's not an ink at all. It's underglaze. And then you're going to squeegee it through. Squeegee it as many times as you feel. You're not going to get used to doing this until a little bit later. So see what happens when you squeegee it 3 times, 1 time. But you'd be pretty surprised that it seems like you waste a lot of underglaze, but it doesn't take much because of the the cornstarch with the jelly plate really absorbs it pretty well. So it doesn't take much to actually do a pass through. So you take your pot while it's leather hard. This is important. You can technically do this when it's bisque, but you like to put handles on these so you can avoid it. So that way you can get it like all the way around. While it's leather hard, go ahead and start flattening and pushing it down and rolling it across the thing. It's not going to line up perfectly. All right. That's important to note. And you see here, I missed part of it. Just grab another pot and slap it right on. Because it doesn't really matter. Like right there, whatever. I'll put the handle there. It's a mug. Who cares? Now, important, after every single time you do it, grab a sponge, a wet sponge, and wipe off everything. So the cornstarch, the ink, well, underglaze. You can reuse that as much as you want. You can probably get some other clay and stamp it down, but these dry out pretty quick. So you gotta move pretty fast. And then you want to make sure and dry it, because if you don't, things won't go very well. Quick refresher and a look at some other ones. This is one from the beginning of the video, the skulls. Just squeegee your underglaze. It looks super cool like every time I do it. Like every time I do it, I'm like, oh, good job, you. Because it's not as hard as I thought it would be. I've been trying to do this for a long time, but I had so many issues, especially with silk screening on the paper. But the key seems to be letting the underglaze thicken up by leaving the lid off, adding a little bit of silkscreen medium, and designing silk screens that are bigger. So instead of you focusing on the individual, you start focusing on the all over design. It works a lot better. The jelly plate also was very nice. I don't remember where I saw that. I remember that from just silkscreen mono printing, like from printmaking. And I saw that and I was like, you know what? Why don't you just do that with ceramics as well? And it works. And I don't show it in this video, but you can silk screen this onto paper, like rice paper, and use that for traditional, like temporary tattoo style transfers. The mug is great. I'll show you right here. So you just silk screen on any rice paper. I'm using actually old fabric patterns, from for designing dresses and stuff. It actually takes the ink really well and releases it really well. But you spritz that down to loosen it up a little bit. Wrap it around the piece. Just like with Sandbow, just like with Elan transfers, it really works just the same. Give it a little hug. And then once you have it positioned the plate where you want it, that's when you can take your whatever type of rib you have. You can also use a sponge that you dried out. And you're kind of just burnishing it down. That's all it is. Love those beautiful peels. That is the nice thing though about the paper. Much more Instagrammable, Like that peel reveal looks pretty nice. But I don't know, I really also like the roll. Both look pretty good. So it's really whatever you want to try. They both work pretty well. With trimming, let those stiffen up a little bit more because they're generally pretty wet whenever you do the rolling and all that. So they're pretty, they can be dunted. And you don't want to take the pattern off the side, right? After all that work, you just use the clay lugs to smudge them off. So make sure to let that stiffen up for a little bit. But it's just like any normal mug whenever you're trimming. Kyle, personally, you like to give it just a little bit of a foot. Put some black slip down, draw your name through it. All right, so those have been bisque fired. Now we're going to talk about glazing. There's nothing super important about glazing, except for however long you think you need to glaze this piece, cut it in half. What I mean by that, I was using Mako Stroke and Coat. That is a gloss underglaze. It's a lot more pigmented, but the problem is it's reflective, so it has a little bit of gloss in it. So whenever you're doing this, you have to glaze it for half the amount of time. So this one, I normally do 5 seconds, 6 seconds. So you can see here, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So about 4 seconds there. So instead of 5 or 6, that makes a huge difference. And you might need to like measure it in different ways because you have places that you want like the full clear on. But that is very important to you at home. Glaze it about half as long. So if you brush on your clear, you do 3 coats, do 2 coats, do 1.5 coats, because these will want to run. When loading the bisque, it doesn't matter what you have in this Cone 6 electric. They can all just hang out and be homies. A reminder about firing Cone 6, 2232. Apparently, if it goes over that, your glaze is going to run even more. Come back in a couple days, though, and you can see the absolute magnificence. So these fired pretty well. My porcelain slips worked pretty well. The transfers looked gorgeous. They show through the gloss on top pretty nicely. Some experiments with some other ones inside of here too. But yeah, the whole transfers worked. If it's any thicker of glaze, then they'll start running, which is a bummer. So you just have to be careful about taking care of that. Here's a quick little gallery at the end, just showing you some of the different ones. And this is just from this summer's workshop. I'm sure I'll come up with a lot more here in the future. But I absolutely love how that eyeball one turned out. And especially the oranges. All right. Until next time.